Okay, we're back for another social history. I was going to say lesson then, but another social history video. Now, I was brought up on a council house, the time when more British people were living in social housing, before they were all sold off by the government in the 1980s. But there was a sense of community. Everyone was more or less in the same boat. It was a time when being poor was simply more accepted. And I can remember what my parents did and what they said that would make you laugh and cringe today, according to their rules. Now, if you were brought up on a council estate back in the 70s, your parents had standards, and boy, did they have you to stick by them. Well, as part of our social history, there was an etiquette that our parents expected us to abide by, even though they seemed strange, pretentious, dodgy, or even rude. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So here is my list of what do's and don'ts that we had on those estates when we were kids. So let's get on with it. This is according to what my mother said. Number 1. Never answer the door until you've nosed behind the curtain at the window. You never know who's at that door, especially on a Friday. It could be the rent collector or the provident woman, or even worse, the bailiffs, or the TV licence detector people, for those that didn't have a licence. And you do not make a noise until well after that third knock at the door, because some were very persistent. We weren't the only ones. I remember next door, they always had their record player on, until these people were in the area, and then the record player was turned off. Rule number 2. If you ever had a visit from a relative such as an aunt or an uncle, don't be the first to offer up a cup of tea. Just because you were pleased to see them doesn't mean that your parents were. They could have been nosy busybodies that just want information rather than wanting to give you a friendly visit. Now I can remember my mother telling us all to put our coats on many occasions to pretend that we were going out. Trouble is, I used to believe that we were going out sometimes. I remember in the 1970s many people were without telephones, so visitors, whether you wanted them or not, came on spec. Rule number 3. If you got company and you have a colour TV set, if you were lucky, and you are watching an old black and white film, you were told to turn that TV set over before anybody ever was allowed into the house to a colour picture. You didn't want other folks thinking that you'd only got a black and white TV. Now this always made me laugh because our TV was rented anyway. Rule number 4. Always keep a duster by your window so you could just pick it up and be ready to clean those windows when an argument started in the street with neighbours. You'd have to hear every single word, and if one of us kids said anything during this observation operation, you were hushed. The sub-rule was, if someone else told you about this row afterwards, you played dumb in case you could extract more information. Rule number 5. Always keep some foreign coins in case the electricity or the gas meter ran out when you were skint. They would come and empty the meter, and you could always blame the kids. I wonder how many of these collectors ever believed the story. Now, those old football coins, they were very handy, the ones you got from the petrol station, because they fitted the meters just well, according to my dad. The problem is, the collectors always gave you those foreign coins back, so you could use them again. It was almost like they knew you were doing it. Rule number 6. We were always told to sit upstairs when we got on the bus. Now, when we were kids, we had those old open back door buses that were in operation with the conductors. The conductors would collect the fares. We were upstairs, but then we'd say, Mother's downstairs, assuming that she was going to pay for the fares. Until we alighted, and then we saw only 2 tickets in her hand. There were 4 of us kids. Told you some of them were dodgy. Rule number 7. We were always told to bring our friends around when we got something new in the house, or even second hand. Make sure they see that new radio or make sure they ring that new doorbell, hoping they would run and tell their parents. but they were never interested, so they never did. But when families didn't have much like ours, it was such a big event, especially if we happened to have the electricity on at the same time. It's all true. This is true, honestly. Rule number 8. Always tip the bin men at Christmas time. They remember when you were seemingly more generous when collecting your extra bits of rubbish that didn't fit into your metal dustbin. And they worked hard carrying them by hand and bringing them round to your back garden when they were empty. They deserved it. They really did. Rule number 9. Always be on your best behaviour when you're out with your parents. I remember those Saturday afternoons on rare occasions where Mum and Dad went to the pub. We'd be brill-creamed haired and put into the children's room with a packet of crisps and a glass of pop, which lasted us all of 10 minutes, and then we were bored senseless for the next 2 hours. And then there was the shops. No asking, no messing, no fiddling with stuff in the supermarket. And as I recall, "Don't show me up in public" was always the quote. But we respected that we had to behave, and we knew the consequences of our behaviours. For example, Mother would say, "See that policeman over there?" Yes, we really did behave. Number 10. Always spring clean if you're expecting visitors. Now this was a nightmare. Beating rugs over the washing line, scrubbing skirting boards, and even dusting behind the pictures on the walls, and covering every lino crack with a rug. That house, albeit nothing matched and the furniture was aged, had to be spotless. Even Dad's ashtray was emptied, all of his dog ends flung out, the ones he used to roll up again. Now I'm beginning to wonder at this stage whether it's just me, or did any other family live like this? Please let me know. Anyway, moving on. Rule number 11. Always be the first in the queue at the jumble sale, because you don't want to be stuck behind a neighbour and her kids, but always be the last in the queue if it's late at the chippy. I can remember in those days, they always threw you a few extra little bits, so they didn't waste it. Anyway, back to jumble sales. Mind you, I can remember loads of jumble sales in the 1970s. In fact, for our family, it was a night out. Number 12. Never repeat anything your mother said in the house, especially if she was talking about the neighbours. Or when she stood there gossiping in the street, just listen and don't repeat. Especially if she's moaning about your dad. And moreover, don't interrupt. Now I can remember my mother, she took me to a jumble sale in the evening, and she bought me this brown jumper. Well, it was the 70s. It wasn't bad, it was warm, so I wore it for school the very next day. And this kid, he came up to me and he went, "Oh," he says, "I've got a jumper like that." Oh, I had a jumper like that, but my mother gave it to the jumble sale. So I said, "Well, it can't be yours. I've had this jumper for ages." And then he says, "Well, I can tell you if that's my jumper because there's a hole under the armhole." And there was. And I sat for the rest of the day like this, with my arms tucked under my armpits like that. And I never moved for the rest of the lessons, never even put my hand up to answer a question to the teacher. And that jumper went in the back of the airing cupboard, and it never came out until I finally knew that I'd actually grown out of it. That's the 70s. We were always told to treat elders or other people with respect. So you always had Mr. and Mrs. It was never by the first names. And moreover, you always had to call the close relatives aunt. So it was always auntie this or auntie that. And you never repeated what your parents said about these visitors. But I don't know about you, but my mother was very good at making up names for the neighbours. And our next door neighbour, her name was Doreen, and she was a prolific shoplifter. So my mother decided to call her Doreen the Dip. She was banned from every shop in the neighbourhood, but they never found out what we called them. And then we had Mrs. Pilly Hilly. because she was always at the doctor's, always having something wrong with her. And another one was what we called museum mush. Now, she had the same coat on, no word of a lie, for 20 years. It was the same coat and the same hairstyle. Now, I wonder if any other parents ever had these names for the family, that shared with the family, but never obviously told the neighbours what they were calling them. And did you ever slip it out? Because I did, and and I got into trouble for it. But I'm just wondering if anybody else ever did that in their household. I really hope you did, because it was very funny. Well, I thought it was funny anyway. Doreen the Dip. And another thing we used to have to do when we were kids, before this threshold came in, is if anything came on the TV, and my mother would say something naughty came on, like Carry On. I think it was Carry On Camping. The very first scene when there are all these nudes walking around, and my mother would say, right, you've got to hide your eyes, before the naughty bits were finished. Now, I never peeped. Never peeped. Now, my siblings said that they always peeped, but I must have been very, very good behaviour, but I never peeped. There you are. Anyway, I'm going to finish off by saying thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Please comment. I've had lots of comments, most of them good. I had one saying I've got a radio face. Oh well, I've decided I'm going to show my radio face off. I don't care. And anyway, there's more videos on my channel, all about social history in Britain, and particularly growing up as we did, or we were youngsters enjoying life and the freedom of the 1970s. People have asked me if I wanted to do something on the 1960s. I wondered if that'd be something that you'd enjoy. Please let me know. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.